Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Augmented Reality Podcast, presented by the SSS League, taking a critical look at the gaming news of the week. I am Asheninity, and I'm here as always with Cybsidian.
Hello.
And we've got special guest back with us again. We've got the Mad Queen. Welcome.
Greetings, Earthlings.
It's great to have you back with us again.
Thank you for having me.
You never did tell me which planet you're actually from.
I could, but I had to kill you.
Yet another thing you'd have to kill me for. I watch my step. So
that would be way too much information for you to handle.
Hey, I'm insulted. So if you're listening on one of our audio platforms, SoundCloud or Podbean, or pretty soon we'll be on iTunes, just getting that all in order. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel for tons of fun gaming content. We have lots of game guides, some reviews, some comedy. We even have some music videos. And also, Mad Queen's channel has tons of awesome content about Cyberpunk 2077, upcoming game. So definitely check her out. Podcast today brought to you by MMOGamerStore.com, your source for alpha and beta keys for the latest upcoming games that are hard to get into. Sometimes these things are just a lottery. It's luck of the draw about whether or not you can get into the alphas and betas for some of these games. But you can find a lot of them on MMOGamerStore.com. And speaking of alphas, though, so Cyb, you were in the closed alpha for the Darwin Project this past weekend. How was that?
Fairly interesting. It's another battle royale game, but it has a lot more survival functionality to it this time. So there's a lot more like trying to stay alive from the elements, starting fires and finding places to hide and stuff like that. But I feel that it's a lot more of the same, and also freezing to death instead of having somebody snipe you is pretty boring. So it's definitely really, really early on.
Yes, well, it was a closed alpha. It's not even in beta yet.
Yeah,
but
and I feel that these companies making these battle royale games, because there's like 20 more of these things coming, and I feel that FORTNITE and PlayerUnknown's pretty much cornered the market here, unless somebody does something really different. So I applaud them for trying, and I know it's really early alpha. They might tweak it and change it a fair bit. So there's that. So if you're really into this game type, keep your eye on it. Kind of keep track of where it's going. If you're really, really into it, then hop on their forums and start adding your opinion in.
Is there even a niche for that anymore? Because I remember back in the day, there was only Quake and the other one, I can't remember the name. But now it's filled with this kind of games. Is there a niche for any new game to come in?
Well, it's the same thing. I think that what was that game again recently? It totally bombed. Lawbreakers. So Lawbreaker was kind of had the same thing, and I don't think the game bombed because the game was bad. I think it bombed because everybody's already playing like 5 different games that are exactly like it, and they didn't want to shell out more money for just another thing that's pretty much identical. They're like, oh well, we had tethers. Like, okay, well, Paladins and Overwatch both have characters who have tethers, so that's not a new thing. Giving everybody tethers is kind of just really, really, really boring at that point. Then if everybody's got it, then it's like everybody being a superhero. If everybody's a superhero, then there's nothing super about them, and there's nothing even that makes them heroes. It's just the new norm at that point.
Hey, the powers of circumstance. Being a hero is a choice.
Yeah, that's true. So basically, these studios are, and they do it each time. Like WoW came out, there were MMOs before it, but this one really took the cake, and people loved it. But it was a fad, and it lasted for a few years. Still has millions of people playing, but it ultimately really scaled down. And then you had League of Legends style stuff come out, and then you have this whole survival kind of game come out, and that was really hot for quite a while. And now you have the arena shooter, the Overwatches, and then you have it's just trends. And what's frustrating is when companies don't get the memo that the market is being saturated. It's like, hey, we're 2 years late to responding to this, but now we're going to invest 3 years in making this game. And then they do, and they come out with it, and by the time they do come out with it, nobody's playing that type style of game in the numbers that were being played before, or the market has really changed and shifted, and now, especially when you charge outright for it, you're going to have a hard time finding an audience, really hard time finding an audience. And I think that's what's happened with Lawbreakers, and I think that's what's going to happen with a lot of these arena survival MOSAs that come out. I really think that it's not going to last.
Well, I suppose that when they have the idea and they start developing, it was a trend, but now years went by and we are in a different moment, and I see everything so saturated. And actually, my main concern about that, because it is not my type of games, but Quake, I have memories for the original Quake, and I was looking forward to see again to see what they're going to do with it. Mostly because with all the great reboots that are going on these later years, like Doom was amazing, and I was expecting this similar kind of surprise with Quake, but the things that I saw on Twitch were like, hello? This is like Overwatch with the name of Quake in it, and that's it. And they are not investing time and resources in create something renewed that has the spirit of the old one, but is renewed, like they did with Doom. That I believe that was very interesting, because it was the original Doom, but at the same time something really new, and everything was, that had this novelty look, and at the same time we're offering exactly the same. But I believe that this is not the same with a simple single player game like Doom that you spend 100 hours inside, than a game like Quake where you're supposed to spend years inside. And they're going to need to find something really, really explosive to surprise the players, so they want to invest the time in that game, because I believe that the trend is dying.
Yeah, no, trends are, and that, I mean, it's a trend, it's dying because it is a trend. All trends die out, become less popular. They don't always die out completely, but they definitely don't, they're not mainstream. That's why it's called a trend. And then, it resets, and then it comes back. It comes back over and over and over again. This year we saw the slow turn-based combat become one of the more popular games of 2017 as a general trend. But that used to be there a long time ago. That used to be, in Baldur's Gate, we're going back really long time into the history of gaming to find another time where you had not only one but two turn-based RPGs, strategy games, take up really central focus in the gaming community. And there's even more that's come out this year that is also really, really good. I can't tell you how awesome Battle Chasers Night War. I keep wanting to say Nightmare, so that I keep mixing it up. But Battle Chasers Night War is also really, really good. I expect that they'll put it out for mobile devices in the future because it's very mobile friendly. But trends are trends because they come and go. And I think what we see is a lot of studios who rush to the trends, and they try and service the trend market, but without doing anything new, and they end up just shooting themselves in the foot. And I think that's what we see here a lot. And I think that we will have another game style that ends up becoming the number one thing in probably about a year and a half from now. I think. I think a completely new game style and mode that not many people are currently playing right now is going to become the hot thing in about a year and a half. The new gameplay that I think is going to really take the cake is probably going to be Sea of Thieves kind of stuff, where it's a team-based thing. You got one person steering, you got people on the guns, you got other people running around fixing stuff. That kind of gameplay, I think, has a real strong possibility to become the next big thing. Depends on how well it does, depends on a lot of other factors.
Some trends are more lovely than others. And one of the hateful trends I was thinking about is microtransactions. I really hate this
Yeah.
trend. I really hate this trend. Well,
Nice.
not really. Just to make clear my opinion, when you have a free-to-play game, I don't mind microtransactions. I understand that the developers need to make a revenue out of them. And if they are not forcing you to pay, I mean, like in, for instance, I don't know, Legends, Elder Scrolls Legends, that you are not forced to pay, I'm totally fine with that. But the AAA games, I am not fine.
Look at Mad Queen stepping up with the segue here. You're making my job too
Yeah.
easy. So,
Let me add this before we go into it. I stopped playing League of Legends when they introduced the random crates. When they introduced the random system of getting loot, and they're like, "Hey, go and buy these things." That it's a loot box. Up until that point, it was, you want this skin, buy this skin for $2. You want this skin, buy this skin for $5. You want this really awesome skin, buy this really awesome skin for $20. That was the way that the game worked. And it wasn't until they're like, hey, buy all these keys, and all these keys will form together and they'll give you something random. As soon as they started doing that, my interest in the game just took a dive, a free fall dive.
I heard someplace that in some countries, I don't know if that is true, if that is accurate, because I only heard it and I didn't dig more about that in some countries the loot crates were considered at the same level as sports betting, and they were going to legislate against it.
Yeah, and a lot of countries have. China has, because it's like, okay, there was a game I played once that had this thing, and we ended up making a complaint to Google Play, and we all got our money back for it. And they were extremely dishonest. They said, "Here's your chance to win this item. Spend $20 and you get a chance to win this item." And a bunch of people spent $20 to try and get the item, and nobody got the item. And it turns out that only one person could get the item. And as soon as that one person got the item, then that item was no longer available in the prize pool of that thing. So there were some people who spent, hundreds of dollars trying to get that item and never got it, because they didn't have the ability to get it. And that's the kind of system that China just broke down on, is because it's completely dishonest.
that's disgusting. Yeah.
There is something that I'd like to know about micropayments that I don't have really clear, is that what happens to all the players that are underage? What happens to all of them? They are all exposed to make microtransactions, and they don't own credit cards to pay to win, basically. So what happens with all these people?
I think that comes down to what an individual country defines as gambling, and this was definitely... there was a case in the U.S. recently. They were looking at the legal definition of gambling. It was the ratings board. Shoot, what's it called? The name is slipping my mind, but they were looking at whether or not random loot boxes fit the legal definition of gambling, and therefore required, a mature rating on the game. It came back that it didn't fit the legal definition of gambling as it stood currently, but they did recommend that the legal definition of gambling should maybe change to accommodate this, because this is a new thing that we haven't seen before, really. It's really a new thing, and so legislation probably needs to change to accommodate it.
Well, usually legislation goes slower than technology.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. That's why we're having this whole mess of a controversy about net neutrality. So
I believe that there should be legislation that forces developers to clearly say when the game needs inside payments, especially if they need inside payments, if you need microtransactions, some sort of pay to wins with these loot crates, with everything that is going to be requested a payment for. Because if they say that the game is plus 18, it's possible that some parents believe that the kids are grown enough to handle some kind of violence, and they may not understand that this plus 18 is for the money that you need to invest inside the game and not for the violence. So they need to be more transparent about this.
That gets tricky, though, because most of these games that you don't technically need to spend any money on microtransactions. You can earn the in-game currency if you're willing to grind for 1,000 hours.
Actually, there's some games that you can't at all.
Okay.
And this was what China was cracking down on as well. Is that there are many mobile games and app games where you so I'll use this as an example. Star Wars Galaxies, the mobile game, the crystal currency they give a fair bit of that to you. In Goddess Kiss, they also gave you in-game currency a lot. Not just the basic currency, but like the special currency that you pay money for. You get a ton of it. But there are also many other games out there that there is only one way to get those, crystal currency, because crystals are almost everything everybody uses, and that is to buy them with real world cash, and that is the only way to get them reliably or even to get them at all. And that is the thing that is, as Mad Queen has pointed out, that's the thing that needs a rating. That says, look, in order to progress on a higher than average play, you absolutely need to spend a lot of money on this game.
Right, but my point is that technically, like, if there's any possibility of progressing in the game without spending any actual currency, then that'll let companies wiggle around that and say, no, you don't need to spend money. If even if it means, you have to grind for the rest of your life to to get the next item.
But this is just a trick to jump on the law. This is just a trick because in the end, you try to play, I don't know, NBA 2K, and unless you want to grind for the rest of your life, as you said, to create your team, you need to spend money because people don't have so much time to play video games, and they want to, move on in the game. They want to progress, and there's no other choice.
Well, this brings us to the focus on why we're talking about this again, is not only this, but also in the news today, which we should probably have mentioned earlier, is that Take-Two has decided that microtransactions and loot box style of play is going to be a core to they didn't say it, but you can read between the lines and you get it, just like EA now. It's going to be the core center to their gaming development going forward. That means that everything is going to be built around making people want to buy. And I mean, we've talked again and again about the patents that Activision's put out, that all these companies have put out, where they're trying to get it and perfect a system where they can squeeze as much money from everybody as they possibly can. They can advertise to people in restreams. They can make, every time you buy a good thing, you get put up against a lot of bad people. So, you win and you're just winning all the time because of the amount of money that you spend on it. But
do you know how much money EA did this year? This year that is not finished yet. This year that is not finished yet, EA made $2.4 billion in microtransactions. Okay, that's almost the 60% of the total revenue of the company. 60% just in microtransactions.
And this boils down to, well, who on earth is paying for this? Well, and the numbers here get really, really interesting. So on average, about 10% of your gaming base, anywhere between 10 and 5% of your gaming base, of your player base, is responsible for 90% of that increase. So that means that out of the 2.3 billion?
2.4.
Oh, sorry, 2.4. So out of the $2.4 billion, that roughly $2.2 billion is given to the company via the 10% of the gamers out there. And that's where we run into this really, really big problem, because these people are called whales, is the terminology for them. And they are the people who will spend, they pick up a game, and instead of spending just $80 on the buying the game to begin with, they're going to spend they're going to spend anywhere between $1,000 and $50,000 on the game. $50,000. There are some people who have spent that and more on microtransactions for single games.
There's people that has this kind of money, and they don't mind, they don't mind paying it. Problem is that the rest of us, which by the way are the majority, cannot afford to pay so much for the game. I mean, it's not cheap.
So what we really have then is we have game companies now that are focusing on a model that appeals to 10% of their user base. Like, maybe appeals is the wrong word, but they're making a game. They're making a game for that small percentage of people that can afford and are willing to spend all of that money on microtransactions. So what happens to the rest of us then?
The problem with the rest of us is that some of them don't have the information about that. They just buy Battlefront because it's Star Wars, and then they try to play the game, and all the microtransactions of the world slap his face. And it's absolutely horrible because, as I said before, they need to be more transparent with that. Because if you watch the E3, what they were using to advertise the game is that all DLCs were going to be delivered for free. For free, my ass! I need to pay for the fucking loot crates. That's not for free. I'd rather paying for the DLCs. And the worst problem of that is not being transparent at all. Because if you let's not use the word advertise, because you're not going to advertise a game with the micropayments, but, being straightforward about what your plan is, because, again, we're talking about the 60% of the total revenue of the company, which means that this is an insane amount of microtransactions, because...
Right.
Because this other 40% is games that cost from $60 to $80 to buy. So I believe that it's their obligation to be more transparent about that. And if you buy a game that has microtransactions this way, they need to tell you, even if it's like an Overwatch where the microtransactions are only, from aesthetic items, from cosmetic items, even though you're going to spend real money more than what you already spent. So I believe that we deserve to be told in advance.
The more disturbing thing that this has, and something that's often missed, a lot of the whales that spend all this money on the game can't afford it, and they're putting themselves in debt to do it because it triggers a gambling satisfaction. And in a lot of cases, the way that the rewards work, the way that the screens work, the flashing buttons that they have on the, spend $50 on this, and the alerts that they have set up, that's all designed from the ground up. It's been designed to trigger a response from people who like to gamble, and they're taking advantage of that.
Well, if they trigger a response, they need to be legislated according to this.
Yeah, but how do you quantify that, and how do you legally prove that this has been designed for that purpose, right? Like, because
it's not it's.
I mean, it obviously has, but I'm just talking in legal terms.
You really don't need to prove that it's been designed for that. You only need to prove that this is gambling because you're paying for something that you don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Well, very true, very true.
And this is gambling because it's based on a chance.
In a lot of countries, that's the general. Like in China, for example, that was how they define gambling, is if you don't know what it is and you're spending money on it and there's a chance that you'll get a variety of things, that's essentially gambling, which is accurate as far as like basic logic goes. But in America and in a lot of other Western countries right now, it's been defined, gambling is defined as, oh, no, you have to get money back from it. So if they took your $50,000 that you put into the game and you had a chance of getting, $50,000, $100,000 or $10,000 back, then that is gambling. And this is what that ruling with the ESRB and the challenge in the States was, look, as far as the rules say this isn't gambling, we can't legally prove that this is gambling, but we don't necessarily agree with that. This needs to be relooked at by the people who decide what gambling is. And that's what needs to happen there.
What I really want to talk about is what can we do about this? Because we can complain about it all we want. That really does no good. All that happens is, EA puts up a stupid post on Reddit that gets downvoted a whole bunch of times and then nothing changes. What can we do to stop this from happening?
I believe that there are two things that we can do. The first is being informed about what we are buying before we do. And this is not easy because in one hand you have the company information and they are going to tell you what they want to tell you. They are not going to give you all the information. So you need to find a trust source for this kind of things. So once you buy it, you already know what you are buying. And on the second hand, I believe that we should complain to some customers association or something like that. Because I believe that they need to be forced to be transparent about that. I'm not even saying that they need to be forced to stop doing it, but I believe that they need to be legally forced to be transparent about this kind of microtransactions inside the game in a way that you are not surprised when you buy it. But if you want if you're right with that, then you buy it, and that's fine. I mean, there are people who are not against microtransactions, and I don't believe that my way of seeing gaming has to, stop them from enjoying the games the way that they want to enjoy them. I don't like microtransactions, and chances are that I am not going to buy a pay-to-win game. And actually, I adore Star Wars. I was looking very forward for Battlefront 2, but after I learned everything that was behind the game, all the microtransactions, the loot crate things, and that, made me don't want to buy it, and I am not going to buy it unless they change this. But I understand that there's people that has no problem with that, and I am fine. But I believe that the people who doesn't have the information also needs to be protected, and the time that when they buy the game, they need to be informed about what are they going to find.
So overall, this is going to really affect the gaming industry in a few ways. One is that we are going to have some truists who say, no, we're not messing around with all that microtransaction stuff. We're going to make a game, and we're going to want you to spend, $5 to $50 to $80 on it, and that's that. And I think some of those games are going to be huge. And I think that that's good. I think that that's fine, and I appreciate that. Then there's going to be some people who are going to be like, okay, look, we're not going to play the power game because we know this is going to end up hitting us back in the face and smacking down on us eventually. So here's what we're going to do. We're only going to offer cosmetics, and we're going to offer some like modded stuff, kind of like how Bethesda's system works, which is really expensive right now, but it's moving in that direction. And again, as long as it's just customization and visualizations, and it doesn't affect the rate at which you can beat the game, at the way that you can, if there's PvP involved, like all that kind of stuff. As long as it doesn't affect that stuff, I'm good. I'm happy. In fact, I'm even more for that. Like I've said before, in League of Legends, I really enjoyed the skins, and it wasn't until it became a chance thing that I was turned off from it. So I think that if companies do it that way, I think the community will reward them. But as far as EA and Activision and Take-Two and all these other companies who are like, okay, we're going to design a system in which it's really not fun to play our game without first having bought the game for a ridiculous amount of money, and then also putting in like 4 to 5 times that into the game to get all this stuff unlocked, I'm not going to, that's going to be problematic, and this is what the community is going to reject at some point down the road. I really think they're going to reject it, and they're going to, and I think they're going to reject it so badly that I think a lot of companies are going to lose a lot of money. And I think that that's also really, really well deserved, because now it's games as a service. So now you don't have the right of ownership of the game either, because this was a long running fight. Is like, when I buy the game, do I physically own the game? Like, I obviously can't copy it and then sell it, because that's wrong. But can I get into the code, and can I mod the game? This was a big fight, because when games started being not a record thing and started becoming a service thing, then that completely changed the aspect of the games, because now, you can't mod it, because you're going to mod it, you're going to change the core functionality of the game, which can mess up other people's experience while playing the game. And there has been companies that have allowed client-side changes only. There's lots of games lots of MMOs and stuff like that, where you can change like the way your character looks and some of the UI functions, and they can mod the game on their side. Doesn't change the way that the game functions, just allows you to tweak things a little bit on your end that can make your experience either better or more streamlined, in which case, you get into arguments over really minor things at that point. It's really minor to argue on whether, Clearcast is better for or makes you better at a game versus being able to buy Darth Vader in Battlefront. Huge difference right there.
Right, because it's really not microtransactions themselves that are the problem. It's the pay-to-win aspect, right?
Yeah.
And it's even different if you're doing pay-to-win in a single-player game like Assassin's Creed Origins, which I've been playing this week, and it does have a microtransaction system. You can buy better weapons and armor if you want, but it's not required in order to beat the game kind of thing. But if you want to do that, whatever, and you're not affecting anybody else's experience by doing that, I'm fine with that, really.
I'm kind of annoyed with that, because is it's already on the game? Why can't I play it? I already paid for it. Because you need money to unlock it. I don't know if I explained myself in here, but this is probably this weapon is already physically in the CD you bought, in the DVD Blu-ray you bought with the game. So I need to pay to unlock something that is already in the game. I don't know if I don't find this a little bit shady.
I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying I don't have the real big issue that I have with that as when that kind of stuff pops up in a multiplayer game.
I don't mind some transactions, and here's where I kind of draw the line. So if you pick up Assassin's Creed and you can pick up some more different stylized, armors and stuff like that are visual only, I think that's fine. Where I draw the line is now to play as a female character or to have access to this, other character that's in the game, you now have to spend this microtransaction. That's where I don't think that's right, because it's content that's in the game that's designed for the game.
It's core content. It's not bonus add-on content. Yeah, core content. You shouldn't have to pay to unlock core content. But then you have to define, what's core content and what's bonus add-on content. But at the end of the day, I can just ignore it in a single-player title. But again, like Mad Queen, I'm not touching Battlefront 2. Knowing this about Battlefront 2, why would that appeal to me at all? Yeah, even if I do spend some money on microtransactions, there's always going to be somebody out there who's spent more. And their algorithms are going to pair me up with them to try and get me to buy more stuff. So I'm not going to touch it.
Yeah, I think more and more people are going to move in this direction, and I think more and more people are they're going to review bomb. I think they're going to make it socially unacceptable to do that kind of stuff, especially in regards to the social stuff. I think that if you show up in a game that has this kind of feature, let's take Battlefront as an example. I think if you show up in that game and you're playing as Darth Vader, and the community starts trashing you, nonstop trash talk, and then the second you're the second that you say something wrong, you say something that's not trash talk, it goes past trash talk, and then every single player in there reports you for violation of terms of service. I think that will start to affect the game, because then it's okay, by our rules we have to ban you for a month or a couple weeks or whatever, or perma ban you if it was something that was too far. And if that starts to be the case, then it will put a bad taste in people's mouth who do buy this stuff. And that's probably a good thing, because in the sense that the community will force them to stop gambling. That's always nice. But on top of that, it's going to I think it's going to make it socially unacceptable to do microtransactions that are pay to win. And I think that if you have a game that comes out that's all, it's completely pay to win, I think the vast majority of people are going to be like, okay, I'm done with this. I'm done with your game, and I'm done with your company. And so those whales can play by themselves. And if whales are playing by themselves, then all you have is a high stakes poker game, and you don't have, an actual game. And that will hurt their numbers eventually. Absolutely, hands
Well,
down.
the problem for that is the kind of IPs that they are choosing, because we're talking about Star Wars in here.
Yes.
And the name
yeah.
Star Wars may be, stronger than the hate for microtransactions.
Yeah.
That may be, but I think eventually people will get pissed off enough.
In the end, what we're going to see is a rejection from the community. And if it's a big enough rejection, then that means that some major studios will go through a period of having, X amount of sales to having a tenth of that.
The rejection needs to go along with people not spending the money, because they may have the most downvoted comment in Reddit history, but if people still buy Battlefront 2, it makes no difference, because every publicity is publicity.
Yeah. True. So we got some new information about Cyberpunk 2077 this week. We are not covering leaks this week. Just want to make that clear. We're not dealing with leaks this week. We do have more coming, but what we're going to be discussing now is more public info. Adam Kiciński, the CEO of CD Projekt Red, did an interview this week that we'll put a link for it in the description. It is in Polish, but it has English subtitles. So if you are not of the Polish-speaking persuasion, you can understand what's being talked about. But you both, Cyb and Mad Queen, you both dove quite deeply into this over the weekend. So why don't you pull out the highlights of what was in that interview that was new and interesting for those of us who are looking forward to Cyberpunk 2077.
Well, unsurprisingly, he kept saying, I can't really talk about Cyberpunk. I can't really talk about Cyberpunk. And I can't really talk about Cyberpunk.
Well, the only surprise about the video was that, Polish people are so serious.
Yeah.
Okay, that was my first thought when I walked through it. I was like, wow, these guys they're just like so stoic talking about all this stuff.
They also did the interview standing without microphones, which to me is really bizarre. If you have just two people standing there facing each other, I know they did it like it's a play on the game. They did it where they're standing in front of the fireplace, like when Gerald talks to people in the bar and
they were in their bar set.
If I was to make an interview there to this guy or to Adam Badowski, what I would do is, drink a pint in a table to make it more informal, because it's so serious. Yeah. I don't know, maybe it's something cultural, and I don't know, because everything that they were talking about made me like super excited, and I was like, why so serious? I mean, you're talking
exactly. You're
talking about crazy stuff.
Channeling your inner Joker. Why so serious?
Yes. Not so inner, I believe.
That would be scary if it became your outer Joker, but
somewhere in between.
So yes, he did keep saying, I can't really talk about this, I can't really talk about that, but they did talk about it for a while anyway, interestingly enough. So what can we pull out of this?
We were able to I pulled out three major things. What about you?
I'm going to talk first.
All right,
because once that I start, I don't finish, so.
All right, so
this is just a little Mr. Bean moment. Please go on.
So I pulled out three major things. The three major things that I pulled out was that they talked about multiplayer, and we had said in a recent leak that that it was a big part of the plan, that multiplayer in general, and if we're talking about in general terms, was something that they wanted and that they were going to add to the game no matter the cost, so to speak, but that they were going to add the best that they could. And in this, what he got when he was pressed on the multiplayer is that he stated that multiplayer was very necessary and very much in demand for a game of this caliber in this age. So he recognized that multiplayer is a core feature. It's how you implement it, and it's how and what you do with it that counts, obviously, and that online elements were basically a certainty. And he said online elements, which was a really interesting way of putting it, or the way that the translation came out. But there will be some kind of an ability there, at least a basic function. And a basic function would be like the most basic function that you could have would be like leaderboards for some challenges, and probably the ability to play with a friend. It might not come with a battle royale and a Call of Duty open battlefield and stuff like that. But depending on what they're able to pull off, we know that the engine wasn't designed for it. We know that they've been having some issues because of the roles that they've been hiring for. But we can know for sure that there will be at least some element of multiplayer within this game, which is good to know.
You can get even more basic than that, though.
True.
Assassin's Creed Origins, again, this was really, really weird because it took me by surprise. I'm just going along playing, and then I come across this corpse, and it's like, this is the corpse of awesome player _55794 or whatever, right? Some modern day gamer name. I'm like, what the heck is this? And it's like, you must avenge
breaks your immersion.
Yeah, it was very immersion breaking. And it's like, this is the corpse of such and such other player. You must avenge him and track down his killers. And so then it marks some NPCs on your map that killed him, and you have to go take them out. Well, you don't have to, but you get some XP and some coins for it. So that's the most basic. That is absolutely the most basic multiplayer I've ever seen in a game.
Well, if this happened in Cyberpunk, it wouldn't break the immersion, because I believe that seeing a corpse lying on the street is something that is not going to break the immersion. But most probably, you are not going to try to avenge him.
You just take his stuff and run.
Yes, and go for the people who took his stuff and tried to took from them and run.
Yeah, exactly. The other aspect that Assassin's Creed Origin has is they have a photo mode, and then recent photos that people have taken will pop up on your map, and you can view them, and you can like them and stuff.
Oh my god, thank god that I'm not playing that game, because I have the photo mode in Horizon Zero Dawn, and I spent, hours just taking pictures. It's absolutely time consuming, and it's absolutely my fault because it's good for nothing. The game doesn't reward you if you do so, but I just do it. I just can't stop doing it.
Wait a second. Are you telling me that the ancient Egyptians came up with Instagram first?
Yep.
It's aliens.
That's what we're saying. I guess that's what we're saying.
So in this regard, I'd like to comment on this, that in regards to the Cyberpunk thing, this could be a system that interacts so well with the game because of the, going into the virtual world kind of thing and seeing like virtual ghosts and notes and stuff left by other users. I think that's not only is it very probable, but it's like also, really hilarious. Like, you walk up to an NPC and you like check the digital or the cyber world, and you see all the comments left by other people about this one particular NPC. And
people are gonna get trolled hardcore.
Hey, if you select this option, then this option, you totally get to bang this NPC, and it's totally awesome.
You select this option and that option, and they call in all their buddies and beat you to death.
Yeah. So I think that kind of Dark Souls interaction kind of thing would actually be really, really hilarious. But again, yeah, that's a system that they could potentially do with this online stuff.
When you say Dark Souls interaction, the first thing that comes to mind is a typical thing that some troll playing leaves that you can jump in here. There's no danger. And then you jump in, you obviously die.
Awesome weapon down here. It's like free birdseed for roadrunners.
And then goodbye.
Yeah, you're dead.
Death for gravity, yes. Usually that's my main cause of death in games. Death for gravity. Yeah, even in Borderlands 2, which was almost absolutely impossible to die for gravity. Just in these specific parts of the map where you could die for gravity, I did die there. Like, no one else did. I did. Borderlands 2, yes, I did die for gravity in there.
You died for gravity. Well,
yes.
You put it all on the line for science, I guess. All right, so besides multiplayer, what else are we looking at?
So when asked about the release time, date, and then also the formula for their release, when I say formula, I mean like the nature of how they were going to start talking about the information. And the response was very, very interesting. That he said that they're going to push for a narrative focus. And that's an interesting way of it being translated, or the usage of words that he was saying. That means that essentially, in my estimation, I should always clarify that. Because nobody knows this game and this world, I think the first couple of big trailers and leaks and information that we'll get about this game is going to try and connect us with a character within the game that people will be engaged with, and then they will want to learn more about the world. I think that they're going to push a story, and in that story, they're going to push a character or characters or a situation that as soon as you start watching trailers and the information and the sneak peeks, that you're going to start caring or wanting to be involved in that story in some format. And so it was very interesting that the way he answered this was the most interesting of, I think, the whole thing, because he said that it was very important that the advertising be done in this fashion. Between him and a bunch of the other people in the company that have been making cryptic tweets and stuff like that, I think we're going to start hearing about this game, and we're going to start getting a lot of information, I think, pretty early on in 2018. And I think we're even going to be able to get some of it, maybe even in December. I've been hearing a rumor that we might see a trailer or something drop in the December period, which would probably be a good idea, but we'll see.
Yes, you got all this stuff, all what you were talking about from this interview. I think that I just stopped when I heard him saying the word soon. And then I forgot about this. Yeah, you're just got stuck in there. It's soon. Yeah, but what does soon mean? What I believe that soon means probably is not the soon that he means. Maybe I want it to be sooner that he can deliver.
And that's very true, because there's a lot of times where it's like, well, okay, what does soon mean for this company or that company? When they say soon, do they mean like, are we talking next week, or are we talking next month, or are we talking about 10 years from now? Because I remember a developer at a conference who said that we were gonna be able to get our hands on a demo for I think it was Duke Nukem, and then I heard it again from somebody when they were talking about Ghost from Blizzard. And in both cases, they're like, oh yeah, we're going to get you guys a demo real soon. And then like 8 years later, in one case, the game came out and it was trash. And then in the other case, it never came out, period. So the demo came out, but the actual game never came out, I think it was.
It does seem like CDPR is very calculated in how they go about this kind of thing, though. So I imagine if he's going to say we have something happening soon, that maybe doesn't mean next week, but they're not going to let it drag out forever and ever.
Well, it doesn't look like, but anyway, soon, assume that is this December, and assume that is this March. It's not, I do understand both as soon, so I just would like to know what he means with soon. I don't know if soon means in the next big event, or soon means whenever they want.
Mm-hmm. I think by the time the next GDC rolls around, we will have a trailer come out either at the GDC or around it. I'm pretty positive that's what we're going to see, because of all of the pressure on this, and the fact that it's a really good time for them to do a big trailer release, especially if it's a story trailer. That's the big thing, is the story trailer and how they interact with that. I think that's very, very, very possible.
That would set them up nicely if they're planning a late 2018 release for the game.
Or even an early 2019 release. Mm-hmm. If they're going to release in March 2019, that's a perfect, that's a high release window. So if they wanted people to start to get invested in the game, I think that's what they want. And I think that we won't see a lot of gameplay. I think we'll see story content. And I think once that story content is focused on, then I think what we're going to have past that is we're going to have this this big focus on the gameplay that's going to come out very much kind of like the Fallout did. They're going to have a big presentation at one of the E3s, whether it's this year or whether it's the next year. this coming year or the next year, 2018 or 2019.
Well, I believe that I would love it they do that way, because for me it's more important how are they going to pull the stories than how are they going to pull the gameplay. Because more or less the gameplay is I'm more easy to be happy with. I suppose that would be the way to put it. But in the story, if they don't do the things that I would expect them to do with the story, I would be less likely to be happy with the game. So I would love to see how they focus on the story part of the game. Is actually the amazing part, because otherwise it's only a Deus Ex.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last thing is that they wanted to do, this was when he was asking about development, this was really hammered, and that they want to do new things in new fields that were not present in The Witcher, and that they're being very ambitious with this. They want to do new stuff in new ways. So this was peek into anything other than that they're going to try for gameplay that you didn't have in The Witcher, and that's good. And there's a lot of different ways that they can go with that, and hopefully they take advantage of that. So that's all the stuff I got from it. Mad Queen, what about you?
The first thing that caught my attention was the soon part, and actually because I am pretty concerned about the latest news that we have about the studio. That in one hand it all sounds like bullshit. I want to be completely honest about that. Sounds like bullshit, but on the other, what if it's not? Some things that were said in that controversy regarding the problems that CD Projekt was having with Cyberpunk 2077. Some of these things were things that we discussed in the past, like the Red Engine having problems with the multiplayer. So when he said soon, then later I have all these controversy troubles in mind, and I'm not sure if he's somehow promising an unrealistic soon. So I don't want to be hyped for nothing.
Yeah.
I don't know if you get me. Usually I'm a strong advocate for CD Projekt Red for several reasons. One of them being that they are one of the most transparent companies out there. And I would love them to be transparent about that too. And I understand that they don't want to release information regarding Cyberpunk 2077. But if we are hearing that they are having troubles, I would love them to step out and just say, hey, we are not. Because in the last press release they did on Twitter, they didn't do it. They just say that, people leave and that's okay. And that's okay. I mean, I truly understand what they say. And that their approach to making games is something that is not for everybody. I also understand that. But one thing is that they are spending all the resources and time necessary to deliver us the best game possible, which is something that I would expect from CD Projekt Red. And the other side is that maybe they are giving us unrealistic expectations about the game, which I really hope it's not. And due to past experiences with games that CD Projekt Red did so far, I believe that whatever they promised about The Witcher 3 was in the game. I don't remember a single functionality we weren't promised. A single functionality we were promised that wasn't in the game. So I expect more or less the same with Cyberpunk. But again, I'm really concerned if his expectations are more unrealistic than we thought in the first place. So yes, what does soon mean? That is the long explanation. And another thing that Seb didn't mention, I believe that it wasn't purpose, was The Witcher 4. Because he mentioned The Witcher 4, which is going to happen sometime. It's going to happen because we all know that right now they are developing a third game apart from Gwent and Cyberpunk. The name of the game we don't know yet. And actually, in one hand, I believe that it's possible that it's one of the mini games that's going to be inside Cyberpunk that is going to be released as a standalone version. That is my first theory, and I have absolutely no proof about that. It's just a theory. But on the other hand, I believe that it's not crazy to think that maybe it's the pre-production for The Witcher 4. That is not going, obviously it's not going to be with Geralt because the story is closed, but we also have Ciri, we have lots of possibilities to build a story around other characters of The Witcher. So, how is it that you didn't mention The Witcher 4? I believe that this was very interesting.
Saib's not a huge Witcher fan.
I'm really not. Basically, I just pretty much watch other people play The Witcher, and I kind of speed through it, so I get the gist of what's going on. But yeah, I was never a really big fan of watching carrot run around on the screen for all that time. It's really not something that interested me at all.
He explained this to me many years ago when I asked him why he always picks a female character when given the choice in a game. He's like, if I have to stare at a character's butt for 30 hours, I want it to be a girl's. So anyway, we'll put a link to the whole interview in the description below. Like I said, it has English subtitles. Some really interesting stuff in there, so definitely check that out. Thank you so much, Mad Queen, for joining us today. Thank you as always, Cyb. And thank you all out there for listening. This has been a production of the Triple S League. My name is Ashenity, and we will talk to you later.